Okay, so President Zuma spoke his piece last week, and I was just wondering, how did the markets react on the day in anticipation, and perhaps on the Friday when they had time to kind of figure out what he had said?
Very, very interesting State of the Nation address, I think. The key takeaway for the markets, I think, was the mining taxes that were announced. The president did mention that the country's tax policy would have to be reviewed in order to support the public spending. So we actually saw that on Friday morning in New York trade, some of our gold shares came down between 1% and 2% just on fears of more pressure on the already struggling sector.
All right, so mining was the only mover really. The rest of the speech, not too much drama.
Last year we had big announcements. The president announced the massive 3 trillion rand infrastructure program. He spoke a lot about unemployment. This year I think the market expected him to just elaborate on the National Development Plan, which everyone's excited about, and he didn't really speak too much about that. If you look at the NDP, which is very, very important for our country, the president said it's pretty much the vision for the country over the next 20 years. They plan to create about 11 million jobs by 2030, and for that to be achieved, our growth rate's going to have to be about 5.4%. Right. The long-term average is 3%, and this year we forecast to grow at about 2.5%, so certainly outlining the challenges we face in implementing the successful NDP.
All right, let's look at just a 5-day period on the JSE last week. What happened? Were there any major moves? What the sense did you get?
Peter, we always speak here, the JSE had record highs, strong gains, strong weeks. In February, the month of February has been fairly quiet for the markets. We're seeing a period of consolidation after the very, very strong rally.
These 2 law enforcement officials allegedly spotted a car parked in a no-parking area. They then demanded an 800 rand bribe. The driver gave them
so there's no major moves directing the market at the moment.
All right, okay. Economists warning about a fuel hike in the offing. What's the story? What's happening with the petrol price?
Interestingly, Peter, when you look at the rand, and how important or how critical the rand is for our country, the weaker rand and how it impacts the South African consumer in terms of rising inflation and just spending costs. Fuel accounts for our biggest import value. I think it's about 24%. So it's really the elephant in the room. And as the rand weakens, fuel costs go up, which then translates into every other cost. So we already saw the 41 cents fuel increase in the month of January. And as the rand weakens and oil price goes up, the South African consumer will unfortunately begin to feel the pressure.
All right, okay. We've mentioned the rand. It does seem to be faring a little bit better. If I think back to how we started the year and how we ended 2012, is that a trend that's going to continue?
Look, I think certainly in the short term, it was overdone. I think a lot of people feel that in January the rand blew out to, it touched 4-year lows to the dollar, so it was always going to pull back. A little bit of profit taking, a bit of bargain hunting. It does become a little bit too cheap. People do start buying, the manufacturing sector starts moving up. Miners, they start making money. So at the moment it's pulled back, and I think the State of the Nation address, without too many unwarranted surprises, also helped just to ease the pressure on the rand.
All right. We've run out of time, unfortunately, but I think inflation is the big story for later this week. But I'm sure we'll get you back in studio just to chat a little bit more. But thanks so much, Robbie, for joining us on the program today.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay.